Приветствую вас еще раз.
Greetings to you once again. Let us together open Exodus chapter 20 and read the first two verses. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of the bondage. Today we will focus on just these two verses and reflect on them. We will seek to understand what exactly the Lord wanted to say here and why they appear at the very beginning. I will probably briefly tell you what this means. That is, we know that we have finally approached the most famous moment in the life of the church, in the life of the entire people of Israel. This is the 10 words or 10 commandments. They will begin from the third verses, but it's called an introduction. That is something that happened before the Lord actually gave the commandments themselves. This is the prologue of the 10 commandments. We will look at it, and I would like you to reflect on what the words of the Lord mean when he speaks about himself. Because before giving any law, he gives a word about himself, revealing his name again and again, telling who he is and what he has done. And it seems important to pay attention to this, because it is impossible to consider the commandments before understanding why they were actually spoken. We remember that all of this happens at Mount Sinai. In the previous chapters, we read that the mountain was smoking, fire came down from heaven, and the Lord began to speak to them with a clear, loud voice. Thunder, noise, they heard it all. The presence of God. And they were in fear and trembling. And only Moses went up the mountain. Now he has come down to warn them not to go up. And yes, in verse 25 of the previous chapter we read, And Moses went down to the people and recounted to them. That is the words of God. And here it all begins with the Lord starting to speak. And he speaks not only to Moses, but to all the people. Imagine the people of Israel standing before a great, majestic mountain, which suddenly caught fire. Fire came down from heaven, and great cloud above, and the blast of trumpets resoundings. And they hear the voice that begins to speak and pronounces all 10 commandments, the Lord himself. Not through Moses, not through anyone else. God himself speaks. He doesn't need an intermediary at this moment. He uses Moses, not because he cannot speak directly to the people, but because later we will see the people themselves will say, You speak to God, we can't. The people had to realize their sinfulness and understand that it was difficult for them to be in the presence of a holy God. He begins with very interesting words. He says, I am the Lord. In Russian or in English, it's God and God. But in the original, it means Yahweh. He pronounces his covenant name. He does not just say any name. He does not say the Almighty or Elohim. He does not say Adonai. He does not say any other word, but pronounces exactly his covenant name, which he once gave to Abraham, with which he revealed himself to Moses. And the very beginning, he revealed himself with this name in the second chapter when Moses approached the burning bush. Yes, the Lord appeared to him saying, I am Yahweh. The very one literally translated, I am who I am. That is when he begins. He say, I am, And he does not say it just like that, but so that the people standing before him would understand who is speaking to them, because they had heard that someone once spoke with God in majesty, that Abraham once walked on the earth. Moses said that he brought them out of Egypt, and now they meet specifically with this God. And every time we come to church, we come to the same God, the covenant God, who builds a relationship with us. He is not just a majestic and powerful being, but the same God who builds relationships. Then we see that he say, "Your God." Often, when I read, I skip over this, but actually, these are very deep words. He does not just say, "I am the Lord," but "I am your God." He addresses the entire people, speaks in this singular. Yes, we can immediately see many allusions of the New Testament because the only one in whom he call can see all of us is Christ. He speaks not only to his Son, but also to his people, the people of Israel. "I am your God." Therefore, when the Lord addresses, he is not just an ethereal being living somewhere in heaven with no relationship to us. He is not just the creator of everything. He is your God, my God, our God. That is why when we build a relationship with God, it is personal. Yet in the church, he builds a relationship with the whole people and with each child individually. Just as I am the father of all my children, specifically the father of Agatha, Adeline, and Mark, and they understand that I am their common father, but also specifically hers on hers. Well, Mark probably does not yet understand that I am his father, but he has such close relationships. He does not sit somewhere in heaven. Unlike the gods of Egypt, they were somewhere there, and people had to worship them. But no one could build a close relationship. All false gods always maintain distance. They demand worship but give nothing in return. And lastly, he said that he is a very, very God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. So that no one doubts that it was neither Moses by his own power, nor any other gods, nor any else, but basically this God who brought you out of Egypt, delivered you from slavery, brought you here to this mountain, and now wants to build a covenant with you. Why do I think this is being of the covenant? Because if we look at what happened in those times, these were classic moments of making a covenant. Hittite tribes lived at that time. Historical evidence shows that when a Hittite king made a covenant, he would always be in "I am so and so" kind of all the earth, and then list what his people should go. The main difference is that God, our God, says that is He is a personal God. He does not just demand something. He first acts. He brought you out of Egypt, out of slavery. He does not say, "You must follow the commandments or I will destroy you." No, He comes not for that purpose. He comes to explain that they are now free and must live according to the rules of freedom. Free people have rules, and they must live by them. Just as the Lord Himself is free, He has His rules by which He lives and exists, and He gives them to His people. He explains to them how He lives and wants His people to live the same way. Thus we can derive from this text a foundation for our lives. God, who freed his people from slavery, had the exclusive right to be their only Lord. No other God is worthy of trust or worship. The Lord begins all his commandments, all the further covenant making, explaining that he is one God, the only one worthy of worship, and he came to establish a covenant with them. And he is the one who will fulfill it. He is the guarantor. He has already done much for them. And here are the rules for living freely. When we hear the law and the commandments, we often imagine it like our legal code. Yes, the law of the state, whether Georgia, Russia, or America, there are always rules to live by. It may seem that when the Lord gives rules, He is the same. He just gives rules without explaining why. But the rules He gives are applicable because we were born into His covenant society. The Lord offers a covenant, and each person voluntarily decided to enter into a union with God and live by the rules He establishes. The best example is getting a driver's license. A person voluntarily takes the test and agrees to follow the traffic rules. The rules are not meant to punish, but to bring order and freedom. The first rules, you remember, were given in the Garden of Eden. If we think the Lord freed us to do anything we want, that is not quite true. He said, "Do not eat from this tree." But that does not mean you cannot eat at all. There were many options, and only one tree was forbidden. Similarly, with the commandments, many things are allowed, but a few are restricted for our own good. We need to understand that God is the only one. We must convince ourselves why God is the only one and that we need no other gods. Why was this important for Israel? They came out of Egypt, where there were many lords and many gods. We read the terrible events in Egypt, where the Lord punished every deity, showing their futility. We may think idols exist only far away, like 2000 years ago, but if we look within our hearts, we find idols there too, which we constantly create ourselves. False gods are limited. Our God is sovereign. Our fairy tale, victory, life, and death. Only God controls birth and death. Even Augustine, in his Confessions, recognized that God cared for him as a child. Through his parents, they were mediators, not deities. We believe in one God, not a pantheon, not three gods. Christians believe in one God in three persons, distinct but united. Each has a role. The Lord, when He speaks, reminds us that just as brought Israel of Egypt, He brings us out of the house of sin. We sometimes forget this, thinking we are righteous, but God has freed us from sin, which we once joyfully embraced. Like Israel, we might resist freedom, God delivers us. He conquered Satan and sin. Nothing can resist him. We cannot oppose God even by our selfishness. He frees us from sin. Therefore, every day we must examine our lives. If God reigns in us, where are the fruits? Where are the results? We must allow God to reign in our hearts fully. We are free to obey and living according to His rules. Facing Him conquers trials, and sins. Whenever tempted, remember the Lord brought you out of slavery to sin, and you can walk in freedom. Let us pray together. Almighty Lord, loving Creator, you made us from dust and brought us to yourself. You breathed life into us, and we can live and enjoy life. Beyond that, by your grace and mercy, you choose to save us. You came into our lives, freed us from the slavery of sin. You destroyed sin in our lives and made us clean. You brought us to yourselves and gave us freedom. You gave us freedom from our sin. You said we may now live a free life. We can avoid sin and not indulge in it. We can live in your truth and abide in it. Father, grant us strength every day to stand before you and choose the light, not darkness. Lord, help us walk before you, pure and blameless, keeping our vessel for you, what your life may follow in us. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, by whose blood you redeemed us. Amen.